Hi, Tony here with Phil Gadzinski. Phil's one of the original authors of the Remote Agility Framework, and he left us to go to greener pastures, so to speak, as he likes to call it. He's the, let me see if I get your title here right, Phil, the Group Global Head for Centres of Enablement for Bupa. Is that correct?
That is correct, Tony. It's a mouthful, but essentially we look after engagement and capability uplift across a variety of dimensions. And I didn't go to greener pastures, I went to bluer pastures, with blue being the Bupa branding. So yeah, a bit of a mouthful, but essentially what we're about is supporting all of our technology teams in 16, I think it's probably actually 20 countries, different cultures and different markets to improve how we work and operate.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we've got you on today, notwithstanding that you were involved in the Remote Agility Framework, is we want to talk about the fact that this is an organisation you're working with, and I've had some association with as well, has really embraced that distributed or remote hybrid journey. I've used all three there, across the world. So I think it's a unique opportunity to have a chat about Bupa's journey. Do you want to talk a little bit about that for us?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So as an organisation, I think we've been around for about 75 years. So formed in 1946, I think just after World War II. So it's actually a provident society. So it's actually privately owned. So there's no shareholders, which gives us a little bit of flexibility in some of the things we do, Tony. So it's been an interesting one because it's a bit of an acquisition play. So it's kind of, we've gone into new countries, new markets, and acquired businesses and bolted them on. So there hasn't been a lot of sort of ground up organic growth. So it means that culturally, although we've got this label of one organization, we've got a variety of different independent businesses. So there's three or four main ones sort of formed as market units. But within that, each country almost sort of runs by itself. So what we've been doing over the last couple of years now, and I think it's kind of ebbs and flows a little bit, is working out how to work collaboratively across an organization that maybe hasn't done it that much before. So it's kind of new fields for us, and it's a journey.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to watch, and of course, with the Remote Agility Framework, you're working with some of that in your organisation, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think one of the interesting things I've seen, you're trying to build those collaborative connective tissues across the world, as we talked about it, and you love the fact that it's got that in for you, right? Specifically, but you did something really unique, I think, and that was the global conference that you held that I was involved in. Talk a little bit about the why, the what, and the where of that.
Yeah, no, that was there's an interesting story behind that, because what actually happened was I was talking to the wonderful people at Agile Australia, and they'd actually gone to a digital conference last year. I think it was the year before. Got delayed a few times, as you know. And as it started to be, we agreed to having a digital license. So basically, anyone in Bupa could dial into the conference from any part of the world. So this is fantastic. And we had up to, I think at one point, like nearly 500 registrations from multiple countries. And then it got delayed, and it got delayed again. And I went, we've built up so much a desire and awareness for this, we should just do our own. So we actually reached out to a few people, so yourself, so thank you for facilitating and helping, guided. So Alistair Coburn, so Andrew Blaine from Remote AF, Evan Leyburn, Business Agility Institute, and we just got everyone together. And it's Dr. Amy Silver as well. So it's fantastic when it comes to leadership and responsibility. And we brought everybody together and went, look, would you be willing to provide some content and do a session? So I think within the space of a week or two, we had an agenda and we were off and running. So we actually held our own. We held it across in two. We did it twice across multiple time zones, just because we've got Latin America. We've got quite a big operation in Latin America. Then we've got ANZ and Asia, and then we've got Europe and the UK. So we held it twice and ran it twice, and I think we had nearly 1,000 people attend across the two sessions, which was a first for Bupa, and it was a fantastic thing with some great outcomes.
Yeah, I want to dig a little bit deeper on something you said there, the multiple time zones. And The interesting thing, I would say, holding a conference across multiple time zones, yeah, that can be challenging. But you slice that into two, which was easy to do. But the one I want to tackle a little bit deeper is how you're working in an agile way across all these multiple time zones, because this is something that organisations grapple with, and I think organisations out there would be interesting to hear some of the approaches you're taking to that, because a lot of people are saying, well, how does agile work now that we've gone into this hybrid, distributed, remote kind of mode?
Yeah, so reflect on that one a little bit. Like it's not easy, especially when clocks change, because you just get yourself set. People get into a behavior and a habit, and like it might be an early morning start for one part of the world, and maybe a later afternoon for another part, and you get the rhythm going, and then the clocks change, and all of a sudden you've got to reset everything, and you're kind of back to square one. So it does sort of ebbs and flows a little bit in terms of how effective it is. But I guess what we found to make it, I guess, to get the results that we're starting to get. So I think the global pandemic has actually helped us a little bit, because now we've broken a few barriers. Like we've had so many people largely working from home in sort of our corporate functions and our insurance sides of the business, not so much healthcare, because that's kind of more front facing, which we have a big hospital business and we have a big clinic business. But the move to remote has kind of meant people are at home a bit more and balancing things out a lot. So, it's not as big an ask as it might have been before to ask someone to dial into a 7 a.m. call or to hang around for a 7 p.m. call, depending on where you are in the world. So I think the pandemic has actually helped our remote work, and it's actually made it a little bit more feasible. And I think what we've seen as well is people have adapted to it. And look, there is a bit of probably a bit, not a push, but people are starting to go back to the office now. But I think we'll probably keep a fair element of remote working as we start to shift back in the next few months.
Yeah, and interestingly, when I was involved, you have a real purpose described around your agility. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, we have an organizational purpose, which is fantastic. Actually, that's essentially helping people live longer, healthier, and happier lives, and making a better world. So, kind of with that as the purpose, it's easy to go, well, what's the work that we're doing that helps us to get to our strategy and our ambitions, which helps us to get to our purpose. So, sort of underpinning the goal of the company, the mission, the purpose, we've got a strategy with 6 strategic pillars, and one is agility as a culture. But it's not about agile as people would traditionally think about, ways of working, technology, and do you do Scrum or anything like that. It's actually just making Bupa a great place to work. So attracting the best people, the most diverse people, and making it a place that they want to come to. So when you start with the purpose and ambition, and you talk about it culturally, and that you want the organization as a place for people to come to, then everything else starts to become a little bit easier, because that's the thing, right? So if you're doing Scrum, well, why are you doing it? Because we want to make it a great place for people to work, and you want to make it a place that people want to come. So it changes the conversation a bit.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. So I said before that I would talk a little bit about remote agility framework, and my reasoning around that's not just because you're one of the co-authors or creators of such, right? The other reasoning around that is that you have been actually using it in anger, as I mentioned, and you've got a number of guides that you've put in. Talk to us a little bit about how that's going and what you're doing with it.
Yeah, look, I guess working on building out RAF before coming to Bupa meant, and then coming to a job which is 100% distributed, where we're trying to build collaboration across not just countries, but businesses and cultures and you name it. It was really easy to pick the patterns up and start to use them, because we are the use case. So we're the ones who've got the problem that we want to solve first, probably more so than sort of people within a country. So we're early adopters, and we've been using it extensively in all of the enablement groups. And we've got 4 centers of enablement. We've got 6 communities of practice now, and that's all scaling, more coming to it. So it was kind of easy because it helps us be successful. So, but then it started to scale out a bit because obviously we've had the big shift to remote work. So by using the templates and the patterns in the work that we do, it's kind of a lot of conversation around what is that and how do you do it? And that's led to, like you said, we've got, I think in ANZ, we've got in Australia, New Zealand, we've got 5 guides already accredited, or 4 or 5. We've got more going through the training. We're using the templates. We're starting to use it in the UK in multiple spaces. We're starting now to use it in Poland, in Luxmed, and we're seeing it emerge a bit in Brazil, to the point where we're actually now going, well, we need a global agreement for the use of the IP and the collateral and the tooling and the framework. So we're in the process of signing that. So that it doesn't just have to be the guides. We can actually help people go, hey, here's the template, go and use it, and get them up and running across the various parts of the business that we have.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to hear, because I think it's that the reality of it is, as you move into that remote frame, like, well, you're already in that, but it's been exacerbated by the move of a lot of, we talk about a lot with a lot of organisations, that COVID thing was just the jolt, as you said before. But yeah, the reality is you're looking for some consistency too across those global COEs and COPs. So that provides some of that for you.
Yeah, that's a really good observation, because although the problems that those groups solve, so we'll talk about COEs and COPs because they're different. So our centres of enablement are really structured, and they're about delivering things. So there's problems, we see them, we've got solutions, we've got to create enablers, assets, tools, whatever, and be really sort of hands-on and driving of stuff. Communities of practice are the way you would normally think about a community of practice. It's a bit organic, it's evolved, it's emerged. People want to do things, they want to share and learn and create the container to do it. But so we sort of facilitate those and run those, and there's a bit of a model we use that underpins that. But the value of the patterns is that we can have a consistent way of launching these things. And that gives us the anchor to go, yep, you want to run the thing, no problem. This is the pathway to get up and running. So bring a group together, and what's your purpose, and what are the things that are going to matter, and what behaviors do you want? So sort of setting up the ways of working before you even get into the things that you might want to do. So the RAF patterns are things that we use specifically to actually anchor a consistent way of setting up a COE or a COP. And then once you're up and running, it's kind of, if it's a COE, we'll run it. If it's a COP, we want to start to step back a little bit and just give people the things and the tools and the guidance, and kind of let them run themselves.
Yeah, that's good. There's another thing I wanted to dig a little bit deeper on, because obviously I know, but you've also adopted some pretty, you talked about your principles before, but there are some other principles like flow, for example. So I know that is very high on your agenda of how you're actually rolling this out. I think it'd be interesting to talk about that one.
It is. So we started with that one particularly almost 2 years ago. In fact, it started before I joined Bupa. So a bit of the backstory was I was consulting, I elaborate, to Bupa at the time, and we were supporting the tech directors on the creation of the initial technology strategy. And in it, it was about performance and collaboration, and how do you work and how do you be better? And that's where we started to talk about flow as a thing and as a principle. So we've kind of been on that journey for a couple of years now, to the point where we really try to focus on it, and at all levels. So it's kind of emerging in different ways. So we're now talking about value stream management, and we're talking about, so we have agile operating models, we've got product domains over here, and because it's such a diverse business, you kind of can't say, here's the thing, go do that. You've kind of got to go, well, what's agility mean to you? How are you adopting it? Great, have you thought about flow as a principle, and here's a framework we can help you with. So we're trying to use it as a sort of one of the, almost like an anchor, something that can go through any part of the company, technology, non-technology, because it applies pretty broadly. So we've built patterns and guidance and sort of ways of understanding where you are, and sort of mechanisms to improve against it. And sort of it grows, it kind of goes forward in some spaces and goes backwards. But that's kind of the nature of complexity anyway, is kind of you're seeing the emergence of things. But flow's the thing. We sort of really talk about it. We want to continue to anchor to it.
Let me press you. I want to press you a little harder on flow. And my reasoning around that is a lot of organisations a lot of people talk about flow. It is a bit of the buzz term out there, especially now we've had this whole remote jolt as well. What's your definition of flow? What do you mean when you say our principle is flow?
I knew you would ask. Well, really, just simply, it's taking an end-to-end view from when the customer requests something to when it's in production and we're delivering it, whatever that service might actually be. So when we talk about flow, it's the principles around that. So it's how do we set up the processes? How do we make the work visible? How do we design the policy? So they're the things that sit under it. But essentially, it's that idea that we should be able to see what the customer wants and be able to execute it in a seamless process.
Brilliant.
That's pretty important for Bupa at the moment because we are on a customer experience driven transformation. So that means we need really good visibility across all parts of the organization to, well, when you say customer experience, what do you mean? So what's the emerging problems? What are the things you're trying to solve for? And how can we get that need or that almost like demand and get it into a way that we can actually solve it quickly, easily, seamlessly. Yeah. That's kind of what it means. Like a bit of a long-winded answer, but
no, I think there was a reasoning around asking you for that, and I knew it would be quite a long answer. Is because a lot of people who are probably watching this or working in organisations, they talk about flow, but the first question I ask is that question, and they can't define it. So my little tip out there is define it, so people understand what you're trying to work with.
Yeah, look, we actually have to do that reasonably clearly because flow as a thing is not something that's well known. People will know different elements of things, and when you start to explain it, you can anchor it to the thing they already know, and you can do the connections. But because it's not something that's well known, you've got to be very clear on why we're doing it, how we can go about it, and what are the things you need to do to be able to start to achieve what we would call flow. The hard part of the conversation, the journey is it's not a one-off change, and that's where you start to have to be a little bit careful because it's an ongoing transformation. It's not just hey, we're going to put the thing in and now we've achieved a state of flow, because that's not what it's about. It's this idea of getting into continuous improvement, which is underpinning it all, right? If you don't have a view of continuous improvement, you're not going to have an outcome of flow as a thing for your organization, as a focus or a philosophy for your organization. And continuous improvement is again something that is really challenging for a lot of organizations. It's hard to get the time, the capacity, and the money to invest in it because you're so focused on building the thing. Got to solve this problem now and improving the way we solve it. No, we'll do that later. So you're got to turn that dialogue around a little bit and try and value both. We just don't get to that flow outcome.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can see you're a very busy man by the pings you're getting in the background as well. So just so everyone knows,
well, business, Tony. People don't leave you alone.
Spending his time with us.
They're still going.
There's a second reason I asked that question, and it's a bit of a segue. Is that you and I have both been working on this for some time, but is agile governance and that whole governing agility. That has a push into everything we've just talked about, and in terms of flow as well. Talk to me about the journey that you're undertaking with that at the moment.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. So because we have such a big business, so we do all kinds of different things in all parts of the world. So agility is adopted and in different ways and shapes and forms and different levels of understanding and maturity in everywhere. So we'll go to any part of the organization and go, let's talk about agility. Yeah, we got that. It's over there. Oh, yeah, we got the thing, and that's over here. There's probably one part of our business which kind of gets it, which I think we've spoken about a bit, which is our Luxmed business in Poland. They've got a full end-to-end agile operating model. It's a philosophy. It's a culture as much as a practice and a way of doing things. So we try and leverage them a lot. But governance is something that we're only probably now tackling. And I'd say, look, from a agile adoption curve, whereas Bupa, we're probably Yeah, probably early days. Like I said, we've got some parts of the business where you pick it up and go, wow, just do that. These guys are fantastic. But when you think organizationally, we're probably sort of early adopters still. So governance hasn't been a thing, and changing the way we govern the system hasn't been a thing, but it's starting to be, because we've got teams who are trying agile in different ways and shapes and forms, and missions over there and safe over there, and there's no Spotify models yet, Tony, which is great. There's all sort of different implementation approaches everywhere. But we haven't really tackled and faced into changing governance. It's still the traditional governance thinking. So funding models are still generally the same, and the way we visualize the work to make it transparent is still pretty much the same. And so leadership we're really tackling, so both globally and locally. And I think leadership is one thing where, and I'm thinking the pillars of agile governance, Tony, which I'm working through these 4 things. Leadership is one thing which I think we've probably got a bit of an advantage on, because the leadership group in Elaborate is very people-centric. Pupa is very people-centric, as opposed to maybe some companies. So I've found that sort of coming into the organization. So we've got the things we can anchor to. Data is one thing we need to really improve on. We don't use data a lot in the way that we drive our decision-making, but that's a focus. That's a big focus now. So how do we get better data? So I think from those sort of pillars of what you would think agile governance should be, we've got some elements. One I think is great and we can anchor off, but the others we really want to start to improve against.
Yeah, and I'll concur. Obviously, I've had an opportunity to talk to leaders and etc. as well, so I can see there's a real want to embrace that. So that's good to be. And I had to touch on the government agility, obviously, because Phil and I are both working on that stuff regularly. But it's good to hear it, being used in anger. Look, Phil, we're getting pretty close to the end here. The one final question I really have for you is, if I gave you that magic wand moment, what would be the thing that you would take forward to enhance the whole of the journey that you're on at the moment?
That's a really good question. I think, and we're having some of these conversations broadly now. We just need to get better at sort of how we might shape and define our outcomes. So we've got a good strategy now, which people are starting to anchor to. And I think we're starting to get some really great sort of buy into it and alignment, and that's the goal we're going to go. When we talk about, obviously, agility, because that's the purpose of some of the things that we're talking about here, we're probably still very organic and sort of very, very siloed. So I think one thing that we want to sort of really accelerate into, which we do talk about a bit, is how might we coordinate better, create a better sort of a bit more consistency about the things we want to do, and give a better focus and guidance to it. So the remote patterns and toolings are a part of that. So we're building some frameworks and guides that people can use, that we hope will be the thing that anyone in any part of the business in multiple languages can pick up and go, yeah, I kind of get that, and here's an anchor I can follow. Because I think if we can find those threads, then we can really scale our agile adoption journey. So I think they're the things we are focusing on, but they're the things that if I had the wand, we would be doing already.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And look, it's a really important to ask that question. Thank you for spending the time with us today to talk about how, remote agility frameworks being used in the journey. We wish you really well on that journey, and it's been a pleasure to chat to you today. So thank you, Phil.
No problem, Tony. Thanks very much. And I'm looking forward to the next releases of the patterns and the frameworks, especially the leadership one. It's looking good.